Hey, what is going on? In this video, I'm gonna make a custom hard drive protector from scratch. I will show you step by step my process I use for prototyping. I'm gonna use leftover scrap pieces of nylon and then sew it together on my sewing machine. Hopefully this video inspires you to make your own custom padded hard drive protector if you need one. So let's get on with it. Okay, so this is my external hard drive that I have for my computer. This is where I store all my YouTube videos. So this protective case is going to need a pocket on the front for the cable, and then also a large compartment to store the hard drive. Let me demonstrate how I think I'm going to make this happen. If I can take a flat piece of material, sandwich it together with some foam, and then fold it in half over my hard drive, this might actually be the easiest and best way to do this. One of the benefits of using paper is so that I can just get a quick estimate of how much material I'm actually going to need for this. My goal for this project is to be able to leave the hard drive in the protective case and not have to take it out while I'm using it. Part of my prototyping process is to make a very detailed illustration of what I'm trying to do. So this is going to be the general shape of the case. These dotted lines here illustrate where the piece of material is going to be folded. Now these other dots illustrate where I'm going to be stitching once I fold this piece of material in half. This 0.25 indicates my 1/4 inch seam allowance that I'm going to aim for on these stitches. 4.5 or 4.5 inches is going to be how wide I'm going to cut this piece of material on my cutting board. When you're making a prototype, these measurements are never concrete. Once you get this thing stitched together, you might actually have to do it again with new measurements and adjustments. We're going to go for 10 inches for the main length. Once I have the two pieces of material and the foam all sandwiched together, I'm going to have to seal both ends of this before I fold it in half. What I'm going to do for that is I'm thinking about just using a little piece of binding, which will be the same length as the material, so 4.5, and then you'll see later in the video we're just going to fold that over the two edges. As I said previously, this thing's going to need a pocket so that I can store the cable in the case. These hard drives have a special cable, so if you lose it, it's going to be kind of difficult to get another one. I want this pocket to take up all of the one side of this pouch. So I'm going to take a guess and say that because the pouch is 10 inches long, this pocket is going to have to be about 5 inches long. I am going to lose about 1/4 inch of this pocket at the bottom, and I'll show you what I mean in a couple of minutes here. I'm going to be using a mesh material for the pocket, so this is my attempt at making the drawing look like it's mesh material. So I'm cutting the 10 inch by 4.5 inch piece of material just out of a scrap piece of 1000 denier corduroy nylon. I'm quickly just using it here as a reference to make sure that it's actually big enough to cover the whole hard drive. So this is that mesh material I was talking about that I'm going to use for the pocket. I'm just cutting it up to size here on the cutting board. Best way to do this, honestly, is just roller cutter. Pretty sure that I'm due for a new blade. Okay, time for another fitting. I'm going to put the hard drive in the piece of material, fold it over, and then I'm also going to reference the pocket to it and see if this pocket's actually going to be big enough. So the part of this pouch that's actually going to add the protection is just a 1.2 or 1 millimeter piece of craft foam, which I got for just a couple of pennies, really cheap. So we're actually going to do something pretty cool here on the inside of the pocket. This material here is like the same stuff you would find on like the inside of a backpack strap. Not sure how much protection it's actually going to add, but I had some kicking around, so I figured I'd just chuck it in the project. We're just going to continue to use the roller cutter, and we're just going to use the cutting board to get our measurements. Okay, so let's do some work on the front pocket. We want to make this pouch look like a consumer product, and the way of doing that is making sure all the edges and everything looks completely finished. What I'm going to do at the top of the pocket is I'm going to take a 1 inch piece of binding, fold it in half and stitch it over the top. That'll make it look nice and complete. And remember me telling you before that we're going to lose about 1/4 inch on the bottom of the pocket? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch the pocket to the fabric, fold it over into its position that it's going to be, and then put another stitch over the top of the fold that I just did. This will seal out all the frays in, so if it does fray, it'll fray on the inside of the pocket and you'll never see it. While we're busy sewing this, I really have to ask you a favor. YouTube tells me that 91% of the people that watch my videos are not actually subscribed to my channel. You see, our community is so small that every subscription, every hit of the like button, every comment really helps support tiny channels like mine. Oh yeah, and it's totally free, which I like. Okay, let's get back to the video. So these are the 3 layers that are going to make up my hard drive protector sandwich here. I have my outside layer, which has my pocket on it. I have my middle layer, which is just my 1mm piece of foam. And then I have my inside layer, which is that back strap material. I'm going to put it on the screen. I don't know what it's called right off the top of my head. So I'm going to put them all together, fold it in half over the project, and that's going to be my case. I'm just going to use little dabs of hot glue just to keep everything in place right up until I sew it. Remember when I was making my blueprint and I said I was going to fold over pieces of binding on each edge of the project to seal it in? This is what I meant. This is nylon binding, it's 1 inch. I'm not going to exactly measure it out, I'm just going to stitch it to the project and then just cut off the excess. All the thread that I'm using for this project is just black number 69 bonded nylon thread. The machine that I'm using for this project is just a Juki DDL 8700. I originally thought that I was actually going to use a buckle to keep this hard drive in this case, but I think the easiest way is just to use a piece of nylon going over the top and then let it velcro on the other side. So all down one side I'm going to stitch a piece of 1 inch velcro, and then on the other side it's just going to be a piece of dangly nylon with a piece of velcro on it. That'll fold over top and it'll keep everything in the case. You're going to notice that I didn't put this piece of velcro and nylon right in the middle of the case. That's because if it was in the middle of the case, you wouldn't actually be able to plug the cable into the hard drive while it's actually in the case. So it's going to be offset a tiny bit. You probably wondered how I'm going to seal in each edge of this project. Mostly when people make pouches, I'll actually make them inside out and then fold them outwards. We're not doing that on this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same 1 inch binding that I used on all the other edges, and I'm going to bind each edge, fold the whole thing in half, and then shoot a stitch down it again. In order to make this edge binding look finished at the top, I'm actually going to start the stitch early, and then when I fold this whole project in half, I'm actually just going to fold each end inside the project and stitch over top of it. And that should make it look like it's finished. So this is what it looks like when I fold those tabs in. The only last thing to do is to just shoot a stitch down each end, and this thing should be good to go. So this is one of those situations where having a bit more of a heavy-duty machine might come in handy. There's a lot of layers here that we have to stitch through. We have to stitch just a little tab of Velcro on this piece of nylon here so that it'll actually connect to the loop Velcro on the other side. Okay, so here is the moment of truth. This is the finished pouch. Let's grab the hard drive and stick her in and see if she fits. I swear that this is my first time actually putting the hard drive in the case. There's actually very few occasions where everything works perfectly the first time I do it. Usually I'd have to make this 2 or 3 times just to get the measurements right. You can see here why I had to put that piece of nylon on top off to the side. The plug socket on this hard drive is off to one side, so I still want to be able to plug this thing in. And as you can see, the pocket on the front fits the little cable perfectly. So all of this material, binding, foam, fluffy inside material, should offer enough protection in case I ever drop this so I don't lose all my data. Take care, guys.